So there are terrorists still talking in my head. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists, and they're weird ass families, just weird. Obviously, this is not all. This is not all Egyptian American Muslims. Just a few. They had look like all of this stretching my skin right here is them. They did this. They're the ones who made my hair fall out, and it feels like a little like someone's plucking out hairs. And I feel it all day because they want me not to discuss that I hear them in my head. These bitches are the biggest trash cans, dude. You can trip them up. Okay, they're talking in our heads. If you're a targeted individual, so the way to do so is if you have someone in your house, okay, but you're clearly arguing with just the voices in your head. Fight back. Let your neighbors call the cops. I mean, obviously, only do this when you're comfortable around the people you're around, that they know that you're talking to voices in your head. Allow them to call the cops and make claims, and then, of course, when the cops come, you tell them it's the voices in my head. The terrorists in your fucking head are supposed to sit there. They're quote unquote investigating you, so they're supposed to report any suspicious activity. So if a cop shows up to your door and they believe it to be outside, right, and you're saying, no, it's not, it's in my head, they have to go report yes it is or no it's not. They can't just sit there and continue to talk in your head. The problem is they figure if there's too much survey. I mean, I don't know what the laws are governing to them, how, to what extent they can continue on an investigation without having to take it down. I guess if there's no that part is interesting. For me, it's like there are ways to trip them up. If the cops get called and you're falsely accused of something, because what they wanna allege is that you're in your right frame of mind, you're in a sound mind, which obviously you're not if someone's talking in your head. And that you're an angry individual and you're violent in nature and you're the cause of your environment, right? And so they start these ripples in your life, and then they continue on talking in your head after those ripples have been created, so that it's already been planted, the seed's been planted that you're that type of a person. Luckily, I've never had to worry about that. I don't know. God's just been on my side, I guess. Look at all this swelling and stretching. All of this. This was like my hairline was right here. So if, let's say, you were arrested and falsely accused, and you're talking to you say, they're the voices in my head, right? At that point, there's the terrorists, especially if they're investigating you. I mean, 7 years, right? So it's obvious they're looking for a problem, not necessarily like they're just investigating you innocently. So the minute you say, I hear voices in my head, immediately those terrorists should be running over to wherever they have to, report that it's mental instability, and they have to sit with the person to go over the records leading up to when you said it's in my head, and then they have to sit and provide evidence that it's actually continuing to go on, because they have to prove their innocence as investigators, okay, confidential informants, using this type of a technology. They're not, though, because they're actually they want to frame you. They want to call you negligent. They want to call you a drug addict. They want to steer you away from medical professionals and law enforcement. So what they want to do is sit there and keep talking in your head until you get over calling the cops and you are now officially committing crimes. And I guess at this point I'm wondering, like, how are they going to, like, what are they not going to go? I don't know. It depends, I guess, on how well they've done steering you away from medical attention. But if, in fact, let's say that they haven't done a great job, like in my case, there's no way they're manipulating me anymore. So, if I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, like, and my kids are in the house and my neighbors happen to call the police, and I'm screaming because the voices in my head have been attacking me, like, just violently all day long. Look at this, like these bald spots are obvious violent attacks from these terrorists, and you're crying and screaming back because it's at the end of the day. And look, they made my face swell so they can get these bags. The women have been saying they wanted me to have bags, and the bitches keep saying, I want what I want. It's fucking weird. The bitches are fucking weird. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. So they're not manipulating me anymore. So the cops have come a few times, and I'm like, dude, it's in my head, right? My neighbors called, said they were worried. And then, of course, my son was like, no, it's in her head. My mom is schizophrenic. But I've noticed, like, the more that I explain that I hear them only in my head, like, they are legit in my head, and I can record, in my four walls. I can put my camera on my phone, turn it on, and capture any sounds I hear within my four walls. If I don't hear anything, right, it's obviously, if I'm saying I'm screaming because I hear voices in my head, it's obviously in my head. Why would anybody lie about that, first of all? And and second of all, if you don't, like, prove it, honestly. It's like, for me, I have witnesses. I have my neighbors, the police department. It's just too many incidences where people are like, dude, you're hearing voices, right, in your head. And so that's what verifies my word or holds it true. And anyways, so if it wasn't for the people in my life that loved me and were like, dude, it's in your fucking head, basically, I would have sat there to say, they're my neighbors, right? They're not your fucking neighbors. These bitches are pretending to investigate you, and they want to sound like they're coming from outside. How can someone who is investigating you, right, going to be the perpetrator, in your investigation? Why would they claim themselves as a suspect to the crime? And then that allows the U.S. government, whoever else, to open up this, like, can of worms to investigate you. What ultimately they want to do, what it sounds like, is like they want it to be like a closed case. Like, you were arguing with somebody and you're just an angry individual, and they, but you kept fighting on, and then eventually you just killed yourself and they didn't suspect it coming, and it's a closed case kind of deal. That's what they're attempting to do. That's part of the harshness. That's why it's like they want so desperately for you to steer away from medicine. They want it to be that they want to talk when you're taking it, so it's obvious, like, it's not working. They're real people, right? And so you're going to continue to say, it doesn't work, and then you're no longer taking medication. So they want to do that for as long as they can, until all of the documented evidence of your medical records, the expenses, and all of that, all the statues have, the limits that entities are required to hold on to documents passes, and then everything is deleted from the system, and by that point they're hoping that you're suicidal and you just die, right? So that is the attempt of the terrorist talking in your head. And I just want to say, the more records you accumulate, the longer you extend that time, the more evidence you allow the government to have to put forth in front of other countries that are supplying and have assets and businesses in this country, to say, okay, wait, halt the use of these weapons. Let's take a second to actually see what these terrorists are doing, right? Because their money's involved, and they're also like, it's, you know, they can be disguised and all that. So in order to make sure that nobody's money is being tampered with, they'll take a step back, and you know, anyone who obviously is a terrorist would take a step back and allow for only the ones that are investigating to remain, so that way, you know, all their moves are clear, because apparently you can camouflage using these technologies. Like, it's too many people use too many entities using these technologies, so it's like, and I would assume it's like a big map wherever these records are held, right? And it's like we're all like a bunch of little red dots on a map, right? And anytime somebody is investigated, that person's light goes off. And by investigated, I mean like someone like a terrorist just pops in that someone's head to say, hey, what were they thinking about? What have they seen? What are they a suspect to a crime, right? And you know, that's the impression I'm getting based on how I've calculated things over the course of the years, and the shit they're saying and the shit they're doing, and how they're actually disclosing their moves in my head. I think at this point, though, I'm like way too on to it, to where I would assume that they're a little less inclined to get that involved. I would hope. Like, I'm a woman, so I'm just like, whenever I see anything like, you know, just that's off, I'm gonna fucking check it. That's just me. So based on like just my personality, and I said this to start with, I was like, okay, there's a lot of like craziness going on. These bitches are saying they're murdering babies. I'm like, this is coming to an end. I don't give a shit what the fuck these bitches are talking about, basically. And when I started to really like catch on, I don't know, it kind of corners them, and that's how I feel comfortable, because I'm like, I don't want them committing any crimes, because then I get dragged up in it, and these bitches that are talking in my head can't argue their way out. And I don't want to die, and I don't want my kids in harm's way. So I'm like, I really want to push them up against the wall. I'm not fucking playing at all. So I'll record before police come to make sure that I have, and I'll post online if I know, like, okay, there's a probability that the police are going to come. So I'll record to make sure it's obvious that it's not my neighbors talking to me. And then I'll go ahead, and then it's my kids are witnesses that obviously it's not, and then I'm saying it's in my head, and there's like records and medical records, and me trying to go seek medical attention. And at that point, it's like, what is there to investigate when it's in my head? Then at that point, if I'm a danger to society, then they have to actually sit behind the weapon with these whoever these higher authorities are, to find out if in fact I'm like out of my mind, and if in fact I am, then I would remain institutionalized. If in fact I'm not, then it's like, okay, there's nothing to discuss here. And there's a suspicion, especially, and thank God I gotta be honest, like all of the plays that they have made thus far makes it clear that they're terrorists talking in my head. It's not that I had psychosis. And the terrorists were oblivious to the fact that I, that it was psychosis bullshit. So it's clearly like an agenda. Every time I signed a lease, you know, to ruin my credit. Anytime I went and got a job, to ruin my opportunity. Anytime I got a new car, so that I, you know, my transactions don't work, so I can't afford for the maintenance in my car. Anytime I want to, you know, when I feel attractive, to make sure to destroy my physical appearance, so that I'm not as so that it lowers your earning potential, so that to make me refrain from making these videos and being in front of the camera with good people who don't do drugs and who are professionals. All of this like deliberate shit is obvious, like at this point. So it's like there's no way, if they were to go back and say, oh, it was psychosis, and, you know, based on the timeline of events, that these bitches can get away with what they've done thus far. So but I mean, I don't want it to escalate any further, so I'm like really fucking pushing hard, and I don't give a shit. And the more I push these bitches, there's money involved, so, and they're men, so it's like men and women. The women are fucking whores. I don't give a shit. Those fucking bitches are fucking disgusting. I don't even know what they're in it for. At this point, I don't know if it's like out of fear or it's the money. Nonetheless, I'm like, if it's out of fear, who do they fear? Their fucking brothers, according to the bitches talking in my head, are murdering babies, dude. They said they hit Mark and Jacob Iskander with a fucking car. Daniel Atkins, the girl that was with him, D-Lo, in front of his 2-year-old daughter, they said they murdered, they're giving people heart attacks. My dad, Dr. Georgie, Florence Joyner Jr., who just dropped out of the clear blue sky, right? Like an Olympic runner, winner. And anyways, and these are all people I have, obviously my dad, but like everyone that they've mentioned are people that I've encountered in my life at some point, and it was, they died young, okay? And so, and it was so that they don't collect retirement, so they don't collect welfare, so they don't collect Social Security, so they can't get ask for a disability, you know, so they can't get disability. So it's just like these, and they're intentionally doing that, and they're making sure that they're trying to deplete the U.S. government's reserves. That's why the U.S. government's after these records, to say, no, wait a second, these fucking terrorists are the ones who have destroyed our economy, not us. They're the ones who are doing it, and that is a fact. So the piece of shit's talking in my head. That's why you hear like Rihanna saying that what's that song? Give me my money, or whatever that song is. And like in every other rap song, it's like, you better, you know, bring me the loot. You better be ready to pay your dues, blah, blah, blah. Because at this point, it's like they have to hustle to get their money, the terrorists, to pay back the debt for the United States. And anyways, the piece of shits in my head obviously don't have the money. These faggots are flat broke, but they're not caught yet, so they're still using the weapon to maintain the lifestyle and that image that they have, but they're actually flat broke, and they're fucking trash. They're terrorists. They're gonna get sentenced to death, one way or the other. And if they have to investigate these piece of shits, I mean, they're gonna be dropping like flies, fucking. So, anyways, and then I might sound crazy and if they don't come out and explain, so I can get my money and they can protect the rest of the globe, and like come out with that mark of the beast to save us from these terrorists and all this garbage that's been going on. I'm most likely going to sound crazy till the day I die, which is fine by me because I already know what's up. But what was I saying? Yeah, so I mean the men, because there are women involved, I'm like, okay, so there are weak spots, right? There are kids involved there, and I'm not at all okay with this, but I'm saying, okay, like, let's poke at some of these, like, these vulnerabilities that these bitches have, because I have kids. I'm not fucking playing. Like, you're not about to abuse me and my fucking family and not get it. And so, I mean, I'm just checking every situation I possibly can. I want them sentenced to death. I don't give a shit if I think that what the men are thinking is like, okay, we'll just get more aggressive. But if I die on their watch, they're dead. If anything happens to me that they suspected would happen, that is an obvious, like, wait, why didn't you call this in kind of thing at all on my record, they won't be permitted to sit behind these telepathy technologies again. So, and I'm making sure of it. Like, I'm checking them on every fucking, like, on everything. And so, to that I've discovered thus far. Not to say that I know everything this up to now, but as much as I can, I've been trying to accumulate records. There are statues, and I want to make sure that if the statute of limitation is up, that there is another incident report created right before that one, so that it leads to the next one, so that they have to maintain those records. It's like, for me, it isn't a joke at all. And to say someone, you hear voices in your head that someone wants you to murder, or not murder, but someone wants you, I was going to say murder yourself or kill yourself, or saying they're out to murder your kids, typically calls for records to remain in the system for as long as possible, especially if Child Protective Services gets involved and so on and so forth. Now, this is like contrary to what everybody would typically do, but for me, it's like, I know I'm not that type of a person, and on these records, like, they're already murdering me. They're talking in my head, and my family and to me are goners, like, at this point. So I'm like, what the fuck? And what do I gain out of this, other than, like, I'm just, fuck that. I sentence these bitches to death, and there's nothing to discuss here. Those fucking bitches are out of here. That's how I feel. And I mean, I've been miserable for like 8 years straight, and they actually think the bitch and the women, well, I think at this point, so the women's in, like, their motive is obviously different than the men's. Men, I don't think, care so much to die. They care about the women. So they're trying to pay whatever dues. I would assume the money is the issue. And of course the women's, like, their issue is that they're going to be either sentenced to life or death. And I would assume that, well, not assume, at this point it's like they want the men to push because they're scared, right? And the men want to just clear their names, and they don't, like, I would assume at this point they want to just clear whatever debt it is or whatever it is that they owe. They may want to just walk in and get sentenced to death if they can get away with it. Of course, who wouldn't, right? But I think, like, at the bare minimum, they're trying to, like, get their money up and try to get the women, argue that their dues are paid and their women had nothing to do with it, and they could take them in. I would assume, right? That's like the bare minimum that I would think that if they could slide by and get that together, they would. But for me, there's there's absolutely, like, no gains for me at all to get, like, it's not like someone's holding a gun to my head and they're, but I mean, I guess I don't know how to explain it. They're talking in my head. It's not like there's no gains for me. If they all, I don't know to the extent of, like, their situation. So I can't guess. So let's just fuck the semantics. I don't know. They're talking in my head, and they've been doing it for 7 years. I'm just going to assume the fucking worst, and I'm going to push and push and push until I sentence all of them to death. That's where I'm at. Now, if they have to decide where their lines are, where their boundaries are, and what they're willing to sacrifice or not sacrifice. And I don't know what else to say. It's just, I'm so fucking tired of this shit. There are cameras right here, okay? Everywhere I go, there are cameras because they got to keep talking, right? Well, and I don't know if they're talking because the technology itself kind of checks out, like it just does like a quick like scan of everything to say, okay, here are the results of this investigation. No, nobody here is a suspect of these crimes, and kind of writes us off, and they have to keep talking, or if in fact that, and or if in fact because they're hitting keys on a keyboard that's making my hair fall out. So I'm like, okay, so let's say it times out. Let's say it times out, but it's stimulated, like it remains if it were to hear sounds, and maybe particular keywords keep the system, focused on the target at hand, or subject, which would be me, right? So to say, okay, well, I mean, I'm not quite sure, because they're abusive, so I don't know if it's voice triggered, or if it's triggered by the shock waves that are sent to my head. And I'm like, so that's I mean, that's neither here or there. If they can or they can't, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, I'm being abused. I'm being tortured to death. But I guess what I had assumed it to be was that they're talking in my head, meaning that they're being held accountable by other terrorist organizations, which honestly may be the case, because assuming they use voice changers to trigger the computer, the system, to remain on its subject, right? Then in fact, who's who, and where are they, and where are they located, and what. So it's almost like I would assume that they do, because they do have assigned voices. No, I know that for a fact. They do have assigned voices to identify which group is responsible for who. But as far as having to couple it with like an attack to your mind to cause you brain damage or hair loss, or I don't know if that's necessary. I don't know if they're doing that because they want you to die so badly that they're trying to basically shorten your life as quickly, they want you to die so they can abuse you till you die, and get it done in 7 years or however long, but they want to pace themselves so that you die right at the time that you clear records. So you got to remember that the way they have their system set up is like they're trying. Well, that's probably. I mean, that has to be the case. That has to be the case. That has to be the case. I want them sentenced to death more than I've ever wanted anything in my goddamn life. I'm not even going to sit here and lie. So anyways, back to the cameras. I have to say this. I said I was going to work out at 6 o'clock, but I got hung up on this. Oh, well, it is what it is. This is more important than anything else. There are cameras here. So if in fact they were just being held accountable, right? If they're not hurting you in any way, why or saying anything? Like they were just doing what you're permitted to do using these technologies. Why would anybody care if they they said anything or not, right? If they weren't doing anything. Uh, so that's what I was going to say. So it must be that the technology, like, layers to this onion, right? Also times out. And so they're forced to talk. And because in front of the security cameras, right? Like, they're still talking in my head, and it can get I mean, the voices aren't being captured in this record, because if they were to say, oh my god, Renee started freaking out, right? I'm freaking out right now, right? And it will trigger someone. If I were to freak out in front of this camera and I'm screaming, but I'm screaming at what I'm hearing in my head, and it's on their record, the telepathy produced records, and not on this record, and the terrorists are trying to say you're the problem, then why in the fuck didn't they pull the security camera right back behind me to say, hey, this is, look and see, this, it was outside, it wasn't in her head, right? Why aren't they pulling those records? So, with that said, I want to make it very clear that it seems as though there is like a timer on this weapon, and it's forcing them to talk. So there are vulnerabilities to poke at with these terrorists that are talking in your head, and make sure that they get sentenced to death, and that they never are permitted, their families, to remain suspects to the crime, so they're never permitted to use these technologies again, and so that they're all investigated. So with that said, it's like, it's constant. They're pulling on my face right now. What was I saying? So yeah, they're talking still. And so the only reason why I'm like, why, and I've been asking myself these questions over and over and over again, like, why the fuck, why, right? Why in the fuck? The bitches know that they're talking in my head. It's not captured on this camera. Why in the fuck are they still talking? Like, why would they sentence themselves to death if, like, why? This is committing suicide. It's a mind-reading weapon. There are records involved. Why are they doing this? And now it's coming to me. It must time out after a certain, like, that AI technology must, like, gather all the information it can gather, and it comes back and it reports back, and they're trying deliberately to have it report back something that they've manipulated, and not the actual records that it would have produced otherwise. And then, of course, the minute you start, like, going to get medical attention, and the U.S. government is responsible for they're playing with my face. I'm trying to say it's something it's not. The U.S. if the U.S. government is expending money, especially if they're in debt, right, to pay for your medical expenses, and they're saying, like, no, we're just irresponsible, and we're just doing drugs, and we're running over there asking for, every time we need help, and it's our fault and the U.S. government's fault for allowing, helping us, then, and the U.S. government, they're putting the blame on the U.S. government. The U.S. government's like, wants to provide that, no, it's not them, and it's not, and they want to make, and then, of course, we're like, this technology, we are victims to, like, in this case, it's the opposite. It's not, is it innocent until proven guilty or guilty? I can't remember. But anyways, nonetheless, we're vulnerable to the attacks of these weapons. So they're auditing to make sure that these terrorists didn't take any money, that they didn't manipulate the records to start with, that, of course, no money was expended from the U.S. government's budget to to provide support to those that are being investigated because of the investigation and the technologies themselves. So seek medical attention. If your hair's falling out, go right to your dermatologist. Go to the dentist if your teeth are falling out. Brush your teeth. Stop running. Go to work. Go get a social security. Go get your social security check. Go get your Medicare. Okay, go get, if you gotta take a shower inside of you gotta be institutionalized to be housed. Go do that so you could be at least to the best of your ability, like as up to your hygiene as possible, so that they can and then they can get them for housing you, for defamation, for drugging, for what is it, kidnapping, or I don't know what it is, to like hold someone in a place. What crime that is, like if you were to kidnap somebody and lock them up, right? They would be charged for that. They would be charged for fraud. They would be charged for this is beyond manslaughter. These are crimes against humanity. This is a much bigger crime than just murder. Like even murder to the first degree doesn't hold the same weight as what they're doing. These terrorists talking in my head. So immediately they should have been running, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm so fucking done. My daughter's involved, and these bitches, the women, the fucking whorebags talking in my fucking head, keep saying my daughter's name, like they're insinuating they're gonna hurt her. I'm so ready to sentence these bitches to death. It isn't even funny. Like I dare a bitch, and I know the power I hold, and I know who's behind me, and I know what's going on, and I know who they are, and I don't give a shit, and I don't have anything to lose. So the bitches, at this point, to push me in this direction would be the worst thing they've ever done for themselves in their lives. I swear to God. So, anyways, I'm done and they're saying they murdered my dad, and they laugh in my head. They say, haha, we made your hair fall out, you fucking bitch. And they try to make me sensitive so that I'll cover it up. Like, they're just dying for me to spiral while I'm still young to an extent. Because as you get older, it's like, what the fuck, what am I going to go do? Run around with a cane? They want to do it while you're, somewhat in your prime still. I'm 30 was my prime. I'm fucking 40 now. I should have my money together. I should have my assets together. I should have my career together. I shouldn't be dealing with this. I'm not dealing with this. I shouldn't be doing this. This sounding illiterate and irresponsible, even though I'm not. And it's obvious I'm not. But at this age, all that stuff is out the window. All your trial and error phase should be well over, you're way past that. And so for them, they're still trying to say we're stuck in that phase in our life, and we're sabotaging ourselves. Bullshit. They're terrorists. They're talking in my head. I want them sentenced to death. They're Egyptian American Muslim terrorists, and they're living in California. And I already fucking told those bitches, you better fucking run. I'm done talking. I don't have shit to lose, and I get to leave these records behind. So I can get it while I'm here, and I can get it if I die. They're fucking with the wrong person. I'm done talking. Anyways, have a great day.